Hello and welcome to my channel. As you may know, I have been building my turn of the 20th century wardrobe recently. Now I have plenty of blouses and skirts, but I lack proper outerwear. I have been doing research at the National Library of Finland, and they have a lot of old Finnish handicrafts magazines, and luckily for me, many of them have their original patterns preserved. I got permission to copy them if I promised to be really careful with the original pattern pieces. So I went through the patterns and decided what garments I would like to make. These are all pre-cut patterns, so they come only in one size, but it was assumed that you could scale them up or down and adjust them to your measurements. What I did with the pattern pieces, I spread them on a sheet of pattern paper and I put some weights over them to keep them straight and keep them from moving. And I then took a pencil and I really carefully traced around them, being careful not to touch the actual pattern pieces. This way I managed to get patterns for a few gowns and for this summer jacket that I really wanted to make. I found this jacket on the June issue of the Finnish Käsitöitä magazine. The jacket is fitted and it has scalloped hem and a large scalloped collar. The sleeves are narrow and gathered at the shoulders. I only needed to do minimal changes for the pattern to fit. I had just right amount of this wool fabric for this jacket. The first thing to do was to stitch the front darts of the canvas. For this I used a zigzag stitch. I then covered the seam with some white cotton tape. I used my old Singer 12 machine from the year 1877. I love this beautiful machine that is in a perfect working condition. After that, I sewed the front darts of the jacket. Careful pressing is a very big part of tailoring. I cut the darts open to reduce bulk and then I pressed them into position. These little snips help the dart open nicely. The next thing to do was to attach the canvas onto the jacket fronts. The hair canvas supports the fronts and gives shape. I'll start by basting the canvas on the jacket fronts. Then the hair canvas is attached by cross-stitching it on by hand. I use pre-waxed silk thread that matches the color of my jacket. I just finished stitching the hair canvas on and I called my sewing guru Michelle just to ask about her opinion on whether I needed to put any extra interfacing on it. And I learned something about my fabric because she told me that this is wool gabardine. She told me that this fabric is the hardest fabric imaginable to make a jacket out of, and I've already noticed it. It's really hard to press. You cannot shrink it with an iron. And right now I managed to make this seam look pretty okay, but then I have these wrinkles. And Michelle told me that these come because I used steam, and gabardine doesn't like steam, which I didn't know. So she suggested wetting this very carefully. I don't know how to do it. I may use a spray can or something, and then I can try pinning it on my press back. Here's my new shiny press back. Actually the base is old. I bought it very cheaply from a friend who had already taken the old stuffing out, and I stuffed it again with sawdust and some old wool blanket, and I covered with cotton velveteen. So it's really fancy looking, and it's my new friend. It really helps with pressing because it has this big curved surface that is perfect for pressing wool. So what I could do is that I pin it on the press back section by section and try to press it really carefully to get all the weird creases out. And one thing that I was thinking that I might be able to do it faster if I used my Holly the Halfling here, because this one has my shape, or a close approximation of my shape anyway, and if I pinned it on this one and wetted it, I might be able to make those wrinkles vanish. What Michelle told me that if I don't do it at this point, they will be impossible to get rid of. So I'd better start tackling those creases now before I put the whole jacket together. And while this is drying out, I'm working with this, I can at least work on the back parts. Those have already now been interfaced and I can stitch them together. I think I may have to do the sewing by hand because I don't have much room between my cross stitching and actual interfacing. But at least I'm going to baste it by hand, and let's see how it goes. I haven't cut the collar or the sleeves yet. I'm going to wait until I get the bodice fitting, and only after that I will make a toile for the collar and for the sleeves. I'm also a bit worried about the scallops because the collar and the hem has those scalloped edges, but I'll tackle that problem once I get there. Obviously this will be a much harder project to do than what I imagined it to be. Luckily I have time and I've been pre-warned, so now I know that this will not be an easy project because of the material I chose. Wish me luck. Can you see how it bubbles? It just seems to hate water.
I'll baste the seams using basting thread, and then I sew them by hand using backstitch. I try to keep my stitches as close to the hair canvas as possible. Just in case I'm blocking the jacket back, I use the same method that I used successfully with the jacket fronts.
I have basically blocked these fabric pieces on my dress form. I first sprayed the fabric and I then pinned it under the dress form to sort of stretch it into its shape. And I hope that it doesn't bubble afterwards when I'm going to wear it. And then I've been sewing the pieces together and it's actually looking pretty good. But I have skipped some steps. I completely forgot that I need to tape the fronts. So I have this really thin tape. My sewing teacher calls this Irmazine tape or Irmazine tape. I have no idea where to get it because she's my only supplier for this. But I have plenty of it left. Now I'm going to tape these fronts with this tape. Another thing I need to do is to make a backstay, and for that I can just use this old sheet. So I need cotton that it has some stiffness to it, but it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I can basically use this back as a pattern. I'm going to trace the pattern. Now I can cut it away. No, these are not my best scissors. Okay, let's make little notches here. And here's my backstay. So now I can take my back piece and the backstay on. And now I can baste it in place. By the way, this is basting thread. It's cotton and it's really soft and it is really easy to rip out. It breaks pretty easily and that actually makes it good for basting because it's easy to remove even if you happen to stitch over it. Okay, it's another day. Last night I finished taping the fronts and I attached the backstay and I basted the side seams and the shoulder seams so that I could try this on. I'm actually really happy with the fit. Blocking on the dress form here helped a lot. Now the back looks really nice and fitted and fronts are also okay. The width is okay. I have room to overlap the fronts. There might be just a slight amount of extra fabric in here. I might need to do something for it, but that will be a very small adjustment. I will first sew the side seams and the shoulder seams and then see what I need to do. I might also leave that until I've done the collar part because the collar might change how it fits around my neck and that might pull it up a bit. Now that I'm sewing, I think you might want to know what I'm sewing with. For all my tailoring, I always use re-waxed silk thread. This is made by Corticelli. I don't know whether it's still manufactured. This is called Corticelli silk wax on. It actually comes in hanks like this. I have put all my hanks in a bag because I don't want them to get all messed up. I bought one chunk of Couture re-waxed hand silk and this is it. But this Corticelli, I could buy it in Finland and it's exactly like this Couture hand silk. So I prefer to use this one because this was much cheaper. I could buy, I think I bought, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hanks and it costed like 60 euros. Whereas this one hank costs like 20 something euros, plus I have to pay postage from UK, which almost doubles the price. So if you can get this, it's okay, but for me it's not really a sensible option to use. Even if they are more expensive than cotton thread, it'll be worth it, because when you use silk thread, it doesn't knot. It creates really nice seams. You can add strength. You can actually pull the thread pretty much. So, because when you are sewing like either a jacket or whatever you are doing, when you're doing regular garments, you'd better sew pretty tightly, because otherwise, when you're opening the seams and pressing them, your stitches will sew and it will look irregular. So sewing tightly is something that I've learned. But you don't have to wax this. So if you have unwaxed silk thread, it'll be very useful if you take beeswax and then you coat your thread with beeswax, and then if you want to be really good, you will then iron it between some scrap cotton to melt the wax, and after that you will have this kind of, it's a bit stiffer looking thread, and it will not knot, and it will be really smooth sewing, and you will love it. I nowadays only use silk if I just can't find a color. I don't have pure white silk, and that is a problem, but I have to probably order it online and pay the extra to get really white silk thread, because when I'm doing like underwear using white cotton battiste, it would be really nice to have white thread. My whitest thread is this. Oh, see that? It's this one, and it's actually off-white, so it'll be alright if I'm sewing something that doesn't really show, like if I'm fastening facings or something like that, but where it shows, it sort of looks dirty. And to sew the seams, I'm using backstitch, make them really durable, and my stitch length is something like, well, when I'm putting the needle in and out, it's perhaps like 3 millimeters, and then of course I'm going back for 1.5 to 2 millimeters, and then taking the next stitch. I thought about doing this by machine, but because I have to be so careful to stay at the correct distance from the canvas on both sides, I think that actually doing this by hand will be faster than doing this by machine. And then now I've sewed the side seams and the shoulders, and I made a mock-up out of this old really bad linen. Here's the color, and it fits really nicely. I also added the sleeve, but it's not really well fastened, but it's just pinned for you to see what the sleeve is going to look like. What I'm going to do is just to mark where it wants to fold. Here's the center, so I don't have to, I just need to mark one side. What I could also do is to mark the position where the shoulder seam is. So, what does it look like? I cannot see myself, of course. Well, see for yourself.
The undercolor canvas is cut in 2 parts that are both on bias. This helps the color drape nicely.
Now, this is all the fabric I have for the collar and the sleeves, and as you can see, I don't have very much of it left, so
I have to be really careful with how I'm planning to use the fabric.
I'm not really even sure about the grain line with these sleeve pieces. So I think this will come something like this. I think this will be here. Okay, and now the rest will be my color. So I have to put one on the fold like this, and I have to cut 2 unbiased. That's going to be something like undercolor is going to be unbiased. So basically the grain line goes like this. And this is the bias edge. The undercolor canvas is also cut unbiased. And because I need both sides to be the same, I've cut it in 2 parts that I'm going to join here using zigzag. And then there is a upper color, and that's going to be just 1 piece cut and fold.
Before patch stitching, I'll baste the roll line to keep it in place. When patch stitching, I'll shape the collar over my fingers. This helps the collar keep its shape in the finished jacket.
I finished the collar patch stitching yesterday evening. I sprayed the undercolor with water and then I laid it on my dear holly here and pinned it so that it settles in its right shape. Here's the roll line, so now it wants to stay like this. You may have noticed that I originally cut the undercolor canvas a little bit larger than what the pattern piece should have been. Well, when I patch stitched it, it shrank. So here I didn't have to trim it at all, but here at the sides I trimmed away the extra because I don't want it to go into the seam allowance where it costs buck. Now I'm ready to add the upper color and sew this seam over here.
Making the scallops requires accuracy, so I'm marking down the stitching line.
Now I have pinned these 2 pieces together and you can see I sort of matched all these points in here, and then I've sort of stretched this undercolor to fit the stitch line that I've drawn in here. So this way
The upper color is slightly bigger than the undercolor, and that makes it turn really nicely. Now I'm trimming away the extra seam allowances. I'll cut the undercolor seam allowance smaller and the upper color seam allowance a little bit larger, so that the seam allowance is less visible in the finished color. I will then notch the color to make it easier to turn.
So here's now the color. I'm really happy how it turned out because I made the outer part a little bit bigger. The whole seam is 1.5 millimeters underneath the collar, so it doesn't show, and I was able to press it pretty nicely. The one thing I have to pay in mind that when I put this on the actual jacket, the collar will drape like this, and now it seems that this top collar is a little bit too short. So if I do like this and I join these two edges together, it will sort of turn up, and I don't want it. So I was really careful and I made sure that the collar is in the right position, and then I pinned it so that I can be sure that it will stay in the right shape when I sew it on. I still have enough seam allowance to sew it on the jacket, so it's not going to be a problem, but it's just something that I wanted you to pay attention to if you are making a jacket like this. Now I can attach this to the jacket. Okay, the color is in and it looks pretty okay. I just decided that I will need to take in from these seams. I pinned in about 0.5 centimeter, so that makes like 2 centimeters total, and I think the armhole fits much better. Here is my sleeve mock-up. I have taken in from the upper princess seam to make it fit better, and I think the sleeve is actually quite nice looking. The only thing that is still wrong with the sleeve is that the elbow is too low, so the sleeve elbow is here and my elbow is over here, so I have to lift this bit up, and I might make it just a little bit narrower, not much, but a bit. But I think this is looking pretty neat right now.
I use my sleeve sloper to correct the elbow position on my jacket sleeve. I can now draw a new pattern for the sleeve. I decided to decorate my sleeves with vents.
Today I'm outside and this jacket is progressing but slowly. I spent yesterday fighting with the sleeves. So I made several mock-ups of the sleeves and I got a pattern. So I cut my sleeves and gathered and pasted them in, but they looked a bit big and there was this excess of fabric at the back. So I moved the gathers forward and narrowed the sleeves a bit, and now they are quite okay. But still I have this problem of having a bit excess fabric in here. So my sewing guru, like I call her, suggested me that I should take the back armhole and sort of pull it in, and That method has been shown in this wonderful book by Roberta Cabrera. It suggests sewing a bias strip of shirting, while I'm planning to use my trusty Ermathine tape. So it just suggests to start about 6.4 centimeters forward of the center of the underarm, okay? So I'll start here. By the way, I forgot to say I also took it in from the shoulders because the shoulders were just a bit too wide. So I took the shoulders in for about 1 centimeter, and that was a pain because I had to also then take in from the canvas. But I did it yesterday and now it's done. And now I'm over the shoulder seam, and actually the shoulder is here. So at a point about 3.8 centimeters beyond the shoulder seam at the back of the jacket, back stitch on the tape and then begin basting tiny ripples of ease into the jacket fabric. So I probably should do it straight after the shoulder seam because it's pointing towards the back here. Basically I should pull the tape and that adds ease to the fabric, and that should keep the armhole snug against my shoulder. I think I'll leave a bit extra here, and then I do the same to the other side. Diagonally base stitch around the armhole, catching the outer edge of the pocketing strip underneath right side of the jacket. Okay. I think now I can stop stretching, and I probably need to make a back stitch for it to keep the tightness where it's supposed to be. It's not much, but I hope it helps to keep the armhole in place. Now I just continue with the tape.
When I finished the taping, I attached the sleeves. From the book Authentic Victorian Dressmaking Techniques, I learned this way of pleating wadding to make a support for the sleeves. Now I'm sewing it in. Of course, the jacket needs a hanging loop, so I'll attach it here. Unfortunately, it's a little bit hard to see, but I'm attaching the shoulder seams of my lining. The neck edge was easier to do by hand. I attached the lining for the sleeves. I did it by hand because I had already stitched this seam over here. Well, I could have done it in a different order, but well, what's done is done, and it wasn't so difficult to sew it by hand. But the only raw seams I have left are the sleeves. So now I need to hem these, and I used this book by Roberta Carr. My sewing teacher used to work with her, and she has recommended me this book, and it shows how to make an interfaced hem. And I've used this method several times before on coats, and it makes a really nice hem. So because I've used a lot of tailoring methods on this jacket, I decided to do the hems properly. So it says to cut wool canvas interfacing on the bias so that the width of it is the width of the finished hem plus 3.2 centimeters. So I have these strips here. I have already cut these, and I've also marked the actual hem fold. So now I need to place the interfacing on wrong side of garment with 1.5 extending past the fold line. Okay. So the 1.5 centimeters goes towards the edge, like this. So I finished the ends of the hem. I made mitered corners and pressed the seam allowances open, and only after doing the ends I slip stitched the hem fold to the interfacing. Then I also basted these folds to create this vent here. Now I have to attach the lining. Then it was time to prick stitch around all the edges. This creates really crisp and nice looking edges. I bought this soutache trim for decoration. I used it to trim the jacket edges, then I also made a little motif to the center back. I took the braiding pattern from 1863 magazine. Next, it was time to make the boning channels. I used white cotton tape to make my life easier. You might have noticed the hole that I made to my lining. This helps me to sew the boning channels on by machine. I cut the artificial whalebone into right lengths and then I sanded the ends to remove all the sharp bits. Before closing the lining, I fastened the lining to the top fabric at several places. Joining the lining and the coat fabric seam allowances with this chain allows some movement while still keeping the lining and the top fabric together. These invisible stitches support the lining underneath the dart. These are the buttons I chose for the jacket. I made the buttonholes by hand using silk buttonhole twist. If you are not familiar with tailored buttonholes, you may have noticed the gimp, that is the stiff cord that goes inside every buttonhole stitch. Gimp strengthens the buttonhole and it comes in many colors, but my sewing teacher told me to just buy white gimp because you can always use permanent markers to dye it. My buttonhole still need a lot of practicing, but every buttonhole is better than the previous one. Finally, the buttons go on. I finished the jacket by decorating the cuffs with some more cotton. I couldn't be happier with this jacket. It fits perfectly and it goes so well with this old skirt I made. Even if they are completely different fabrics, My jacket is wool and my skirt is cotton, but they still match.